Hi, my name is Olivia, also known as Liv or Mood or even You're Beautiful by Bestie. I want to talk about my story. I was born in 2010 on the 7th of October in the UK. I grew up thinking my childhood was normal and I was fairly happy. This was until around 2021. We had just come out of lockdown, and my dad was drinking like crazy. I hardly ever saw him. He was always drinking or running or most likely cheating. And I absolutely hated it. This is when I started to slip into a deep depression that is still making me suffer to this day. I had suicidal thoughts in the past, around the age of 8 or 9, but I just thought these were normal thoughts as they had always sort of been there and brushed it off. Anyway, I thought it was just my dad causing the problem and adored my mom. In June, at the age of 11, I started to self-harm for the first time. I don't know why, but I couldn't cope with stuff and decided to try it. After learning about it in a she lesson, I didn't bleed during this time. They were baby cuts really, but they still left slight scarring. It lasted around 5 or 6 days before I was caught by my friend, who kept asking if I was okay, but I just said yes. And when they pointed out the scratches, I blamed it on my cats. Before long, they told a teacher, who we will call Miss C. Now, Miss C was a kind teacher, and I thought she was the best on there. I hated my friends for doing this, and told them, even though I knew it was right. I didn't know about this, but they had actually gone to her at break and she had people search my drawer for anything I could hurt myself with. They found some paper clips and thought it was that, so they actually banned kids from having paper clips, when in actual fact I was using scissors at home, which I openly admitted to a few days ago to my friends. Then, later that day, I was pulled out of an assembly and Miss C talked to me. It was terrifying if I'm being honest, and I felt awful after, no matter how comforting she was. In the end, social workers were involved, and a lady we'll call Kraken came to visit us. Now, this woman clearly did not care about me. She spoke to me like I was 5 and clearly thought there was something wrong with me, as if I was a crazy person. In the end, she said my self-harm wasn't serious. This was a serious shock. I was literally hurting myself. What do you mean? It isn't serious. If any social workers or anyone along those lines are watching, please don't say that, even if you think it. Something is clearly wrong if someone needs to cut themselves, no matter how severe the cuts are. After about 4 or 5 months of staying completely clean, I tried to strangle or hang myself. I was too scared to cut myself because of my mom. By this time, I had realized how she made me feel and how toxic she was, constantly making me anxious, pressured, depressed, and suicidal. So, I closed the bathroom door, had a shower, and after I finished, I wrapped the shower around my neck, trying my hardest to strangle myself with it. But it just hurt my throat too much and wouldn't do anything other than made me sick. I tried this the next day, and then a week after, and just kept on trying. Nothing would work, so I just stopped. After attempts not working, I started to cut myself again. This time, I went straight for my wrists, rather than my arms. Again, they started off as little baby cuts, barely showing, to pink cuts that would stay there for a day or two to bleeding. During the time of making this, I'm not clean, although I was very close. I'm relapsing again, and let me tell you now, self-harm is addictive. I don't care who you are, but let me tell you, self-harm is like a hard drug. It's like being stuck on a drug that makes you hurt and sting and bleed and cry. Every time you see it, you get reminded of the torture, the pain, not to mention scars. Scars can make you feel like the ugliest person, no matter where they are, especially self-harm scars. Many people, including myself, want scars to go away, to stop reminding you of the pain and torture you went through. At the same time, you want them there, to remind you of what you survived, to remind you of the life you lived, to remind you are stronger. Anyway, I'm still relapsing, so my torture isn't over yet. Around the time of when my self-harm got really serious, my dad almost sexually assaulted me, or possibly did. We were in the kitchen. He was waiting for my mum to come and play chess, whilst I was having a drink of water and my sister was just dancing around to music in the kitchen. My dad was trying to talk to me, but I wasn't really interested, especially seeing as he was drunk and I tried to avoid him. He then got up and walked over to me and gave me a hug. I wasn't really fine with it, but I didn't make a big deal of it. Then, he kissed me and kept trying it whilst I was telling him to stop, before I eventually just stomped on his toe as hard as I could, where he then shoved me and hit my arm. My mum came downstairs and they started screaming at each other. whilst I stood there almost crying, before running off into my bedroom and cried. I made an animation for the first time to keep my mind off it, but now every time I watch it, no matter how proud I am of it, it always reminds me of what happened. To keep this in mind, this happened at about February 2023. I've always loved my mom. She's always been my favorite parent, no matter what. When my mental health started to slip, I realized it wasn't just my dad. My mom is usually always screaming, as if nothing is good enough. It seriously puts such a strain on me. I'm always anxious when she's around, scared I'll do something to make her mad. It's not like she hits me or anything, though she has done before for having a messy bedroom or thrown things at us when the place is a mess. I'm still scared she will, otherwise I'd shout back. I'd tell her how much my life is a mess, how I feel. I want her to see that, but she's completely oblivious. She tells me I have nothing to be miserable about, acting all depressed for attention, nibbling my nails like a pathetic, anxious rat. She doesn't know about how bad of a condition I'm in and refuse me therapy. It's making me resent her. This is written a month or two after I may or may not have forgotten about this accidentally, and my mom found out about my self-harm and I'm in and out of hospital due to my mental health and stuff. But I find myself not being honest. I'm very scared to open up to people as I'm pretty terrified of mental hospitals or going to one. I'm having a one-on-one session next week and I hope I can be honest. I'm not doing self-harm anymore because I was caught, but my suicidal mindset is worse than ever, unfortunately.